Picture this. You're lying awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, and your mind is racing through every possible financial disaster that could strike tomorrow. Your car could break down, your laptop might die, you could lose your job. Maybe your pet needs emergency surgery. Sound familiar? Well, what if I told you there's a specific dollar amount that could eliminate almost all of these midnight anxiety sessions and fundamentally transform how you navigate through life? Most people think financial milestones are just arbitrary numbers that rich people made up to make the rest of us feel inadequate. But here's something that might surprise you. There's actual psychology and mathematics behind why certain amounts of money create dramatic shifts in your day to day existence. And the first real game changer isn't $1 million or even $100,000. It's $10,000. Now, I know what you're thinking. $10,000? That's not a lot. But trust me, this number has a huge impact on your financial future, your mental well being, and your sense of security. Let me break it down for you. The first thing that changes when you save $10,000 is your relationship with risk. When you have zero savings, every decision feels dangerous. Taking a new job, moving to a different city, or even planning a vacation becomes this massive source of stress because you know that one wrong move could leave you financially devastated. But when you have $10,000 sitting in your account, suddenly these same decisions feel manageable. You're not going to quit your job tomorrow and become a professional juggler, but you might finally have the confidence to ask for that promotion you've been thinking about for months. You might be willing to invest in yourself by taking a course or a certification that could boost your earning potential. The safety net doesn't make you reckless, but it does give you permission to think beyond just surviving until the next paycheck. Here's something even more fascinating that happens when you reach $10,000. Your body actually starts to respond differently to daily challenges. Neuroscientists have found that financial security reduces cortisol levels, which is your body's primary stress hormone. Think about the last time you had a minor car problem. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, that check engine light might as well be a countdown timer to financial disaster. You're immediately stressed about how you're going to pay for repairs, whether you'll need to put it on a credit card or if you'll have to borrow money from family. But when you have $10,000 saved, that same check engine light becomes a simple inconvenience. You're annoyed, sure, but you're not panicked. This shift from panic to mild annoyance might seem small, but it has ripple effects throughout your entire life. When you're not constantly worried about money, you make better decisions in general. You sleep better, you're more productive at work, and you're more patient with your family and friends. Financial stress affects every aspect of human behavior, and removing that stress unlocks mental energy that you can redirect toward actually improving your situation. But here's something that most people don't realize about the $10,000 milestone. The majority of the benefit doesn't come from spending the money. It comes from knowing the money is there. This is what financial experts call the emergency fund effect, and it's probably one of the most underrated concepts in personal finance. An emergency fund isn't really about the emergencies. It's about the peace of mind that comes from knowing you can handle emergencies. Most people who build up $10,000 in savings never actually spend it on emergencies. Instead, they spend it on opportunities. They invest in education. They start businesses. They move to better locations. Or they simply have the mental bandwidth to focus on increasing their income because they're not constantly worried about basic survival. There's also a confidence factor that's hard to quantify but impossible to ignore. When you know you have money in the bank, you carry yourself differently. You negotiate better. You're more willing to walk away from bad deals because you're not desperate. This confidence often leads to better job opportunities, better relationships, and better life outcomes in general. Now, you might be thinking that $10,000 sounds like an impossible amount to save, especially if you're currently struggling to put away even $100 per month. But here's what's interesting about human psychology. The hardest part isn't saving the money itself. The hardest part is developing the identity of someone who saves money. Most people approach saving like it's a temporary diet. They cut expenses dramatically for a few months, save aggressively, and then burn out and go back to their old spending habits. But the people who successfully reach $10,000 don't think of saving as a temporary sacrifice. They think of it as becoming a different type of person. This identity shift is crucial because it affects every financial decision you make. When you see yourself as someone who saves money, you start noticing opportunities to reduce expenses that you never saw before. You become more creative about finding additional income sources. You start thinking long term instead of just focusing on immediate gratification. The beautiful thing about this process is that it gets easier as you go. Saving your first $1,000 is brutal. It requires significant lifestyle changes and constant willpower. But saving your second thousand is noticeably easier because you've already developed the habits and mindset. By the time you're working toward your fifth or sixth thousand, the process feels almost automatic. There's also a mathematical reality that makes $10,000 particularly powerful. This amount of money can cover the vast majority of unexpected expenses that derail people financially. Car repairs, medical bills, job loss, family emergencies. Most of these situations can be handled with less than $10,000. This means that once you reach this milestone, you're effectively immune to most of the financial disasters that keep people stuck in the paycheck to paycheck cycle. But perhaps the most significant change that happens when you save your first $10,000 is how you start thinking about money itself. Instead of viewing money as something that just disappears from your paycheck every month, you start seeing it as a tool that multiplies your options. Before you have savings, money feels scarce and finite. Every dollar spent is a dollar gone forever. But when you have $10,000 working as your financial foundation, you begin to understand that money can actually create more money. This is where people start getting interested in concepts like investing, side hustles, and passive income, not because they suddenly became financial geniuses, but because they finally have the mental space to think beyond just covering their basic expenses. When you're not constantly worried about rent money, you can start wondering about retirement accounts. When you're not stressed about grocery bills, you can start researching stock market investments. Here's something that might blow your mind. The person with $10,000 saved is actually closer to financial independence than someone with zero savings, even if that second person earns twice as much money. Why? Because the saver has developed the most important skill in wealth building, which isn't earning money, it's keeping money. You probably know people who make six-figure salaries but are somehow always broke. They drive expensive cars, live in fancy apartments, and eat at restaurants that charge $20 for a salad, but they have no savings whatsoever. Meanwhile, you might know someone who makes $40,000 a year but has managed to accumulate substantial savings by being intentional about their spending. The difference isn't income, it's mindset. And reaching $10,000 in savings is like a masterclass in developing the right financial mindset. You learn to distinguish between wants and needs. You become skilled at finding ways to reduce expenses without feeling deprived. Most importantly, you develop the patience to delay gratification, which is probably the single most valuable financial skill anyone can learn. Now, let's talk about what $10,000 can actually do for you in practical terms. First, it covers almost any car repair short of needing a completely new engine. Most automotive emergencies cost between $500 and $3,000. With $10,000 in the bank, car problems shift from financial disasters to minor inconveniences. Medical emergencies become manageable too. Even without great insurance, most urgent care visits, emergency room trips, or minor procedures fall within this range. You're not going to cover major surgery with $10,000, but you can handle the vast majority of health issues that pop up unexpectedly. Job loss, which is probably the scariest financial scenario for most people, becomes something you can actually survive. $10,000 gives you roughly 3 to 6 months of breathing room to find new employment, depending on your expenses. That's enough time to be selective about your next opportunity instead of desperately accepting the first offer that comes along. But here's where it gets really interesting. Having $10,000 doesn't just protect you from disasters. It creates opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. Like maybe you hear about a certification program that could boost your salary by $10,000 annually, but it costs $2,000 up front. Without savings, this is impossible. With your financial foundation, it's an obvious investment. Or perhaps a friend mentions they're starting a business and looking for a small investor. Without savings, you can only wish them luck. With $10,000, you have the option to participate in something that could potentially change your financial trajectory. I'm not saying you should invest your entire emergency fund in your buddy's cryptocurrency scheme, but having options feels incredibly different from having no options at all. The psychological impact extends beyond just financial decisions, too. When you have money saved, you sleep better. And I mean this literally. Studies show that people with emergency funds report significantly better sleep quality than those without savings. Turns out financial stress is one of the leading causes of insomnia, and eliminating that stress has immediate health benefits. Your relationships improve as well. Money stress is cited as one of the primary causes of divorce and family conflict. When you're not constantly worried about bills, you have more emotional energy to invest in the people you care about. You're less irritable, less anxious, and more present in your interactions with others. There is also something to be said for the confidence boost that comes with having money in the bank. You walk into job interviews differently when you know you don't desperately need the position. You're more likely to negotiate salary and benefits because you're not operating from a place of fear. This confidence often results in better job offers and higher compensation, creating a positive feedback loop that accelerates your financial progress. But let's address the elephant in the room. $10,000 might sound like an enormous amount of money if you're currently living paycheck to paycheck. The good news is that you don't need to save it all at once. In fact, trying to save too aggressively often backfires because it's not sustainable. The most successful savers I know started with ridiculously small amounts, maybe $50 per month, maybe even $25. The key is consistency, not the size of the initial contribution. Once you build the habit of saving something every month, you can gradually increase the amount as your income grows or as you find ways to reduce expenses. Here's a reality check that might motivate you. The average American spends over $3,000 per year on coffee, dining out, and convenience purchases. That's not even counting major expenses like car payments or entertainment subscriptions. If you could redirect just 1/3 of that spending towards savings, you'd have your $10,000 in less than 3 years. I'm not suggesting you should never enjoy a coffee or eat at a restaurant, but I am pointing out that most people have more flexibility in their budgets than they realize. The difference between someone who builds savings and someone who doesn't usually comes down to awareness and intentionality, not income level. The compound effect of having $10,000 goes far beyond the immediate financial security it provides. It changes how you think about risk, how you approach opportunities, and how you plan for the future. Most importantly, it proves to yourself that you're capable of achieving financial goals, which creates momentum for even bigger accomplishments down the road. When you have your first $10,000 saved, you start thinking differently about your next $10,000 and then the next. Before you know it, you're on a path toward real financial independence, not because you got lucky or inherited money, but because you developed the habits and mindset that make wealth building inevitable. The transformation that happens when you save your first $10,000 isn't just about the money itself. It's about becoming the type of person who has money saved. And that identity shift creates ripple effects that extend into every corner of your life in ways you probably never expected. So if you're looking at your bank account and feeling like $10,000 is impossible, remember this. Start small, stay consistent, and watch how it transforms your financial future. That's the power of $10,000. If this video helped you realize how saving $10,000 can transform your future, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tips on building wealth, saving, and making smarter financial decisions. Let's get you started on the path to financial freedom. See you in the next one.